Hello there. It's a beautiful sunny day in Kerry at the moment. It's cold and it's a little bit windy, but it's beautiful nonetheless. By cold, I mean it's a few degrees. It's not too cold to be out here. It's not frozen by any means. So I'm going to do a bit of planting today. So I'm going to show you bare root planting and planting from a pot for trees. So you may have heard the saying that any month with an R in it is okay for planting trees. That's sort of not 100% correct, but basically the right sort of idea. So exceptions in particular to that would be sort of perhaps during torrential rain for a long period, or definitely in periods of heavy frost and snow. If the ground is frozen, then you definitely shouldn't be planting trees during that time period. Likewise, I was saying about super wet. If you get a period of drought where it's unseasonably hot and dry, maybe that's not the best time to plant as well, unless you're able to water the trees frequently. You want them to have the best start possible, so it's important to do it in a way that either you can monitor their progress, or the conditions are right that you really don't have to do anything and they will just establish themselves over a period of months. So, I mean, there's a lot to trees. Trees are very important plants, and they're not just sort of, bits of wood. They are living organisms. So, what I'm going to plant here, get this out of the bag. Right, it's important to keep these damp. The roots are the most important part of the plant, really, because without the roots, they cannot stay alive. They absorb water and they absorb oxygen and nutrients through these roots. And often the root system is quite extensive, as you can see on this dogwood. Obviously, the leaves and the stems are important too. The whole plant is a living system. So, I mean, as you know, they're going to produce leaves which will absorb sunlight, and they absorb carbon dioxide, which then is turned into oxygen. So trees, along with plankton, provide pretty much all our oxygen that we need to stay alive. And trees are a lot more sophisticated than you might think. They are actually able to communicate with each other, and even in some cases help other trees through the root networks. That all sounds a bit silly, but that is actually the case. So we tend to assume that animals and plants are sort of just these blobs. The modern way, the secular way of thinking about them is as if they don't have a soul, they don't have any great intelligence, they don't have any spiritual value. But I would argue quite the opposite, which I obviously go into in some depth in my book, The Druid Garden. But anyway, I'm not going to go on about the book all day. I'm going to show you planting. Some people just use a simple technique of splitting the earth. So they just split the earth like this, what I'm doing here, and then just shove this in and stamp it. And that's a very simplistic way of doing it, and not one that I would really recommend, because it tends to damage the roots and compress the soil. So I suggest actually digging out a reasonable amount of earth to then plant it, and then you firm in, but you don't stamp the soil around it. You don't want to squeeze all the air out of the soil. So here we go, there's a decent sized hole, and notice I've made it big enough to accommodate the roots so that they fit quite nicely without any great difficulty. You don't want to have it so that the roots are all squashed up. So I'm going to fill this back in with the soil that I took out. I try to not to put heavy stones back. I wouldn't worry too much about a few weeds that get thrown in with that. What we're going to do afterwards is cover this over with some cardboard. You could use something like Mypex if you wanted, but which is made from plastic. I prefer not to use plastic if I can avoid it. So some people like to stomp the tree down, but that's a mistake in my opinion, because what happens is you compress all the air out of the ground. And if you know anything about building, you'll see that where people have compressed the ground with heavy machines, plants struggle to come back. That's because all the oxygen has been squashed out, and the tightly compacted soil as well is more difficult to absorb the water. So just very gently firming in with the foot is good enough. If your tree needs lots of support, then instead of hammering the ground, it's better to put in a stake to support it. This cornice here, this dogwood, shouldn't need any kind of support. It's not going to fall over, it'll be fine by itself. So the final bit here is I've cut this away, and I'm going to put that around the plant. It's quite difficult to do with one hand because obviously I'm holding the camera with the other hand. So put a couple of stones on just to secure it. That'll do for now. Pick up the scissors. Later on I will put some bark mulch over that, which will give the tree a chance to grow without it being swamped immediately by weeds. Like you can see here, there's a foxglove. I'm going to leave that where it is. It's doing no harm. It's perfectly fine. That's a biannual, and it would have been here, seeded itself last year, and this year it will grow bigger and probably flower. So what happens is they usually produce the distinctive purple flowers in the second year, and then they die after they've set seed. So anyway, that's the tree. Now, or rather more regarded as a bush, the dogwood can grow up into what you call a tree, and it will start to produce some leaves in the springtime. I always do some kind of a blessing. A very simple blessing I do is, may you be blessed by earth and rain and wind and sun, and you go straight and strong and true. In this case I want it to grow upwards, so I would say those words. For other plants you may change the wording. You can say all kinds of blessings in different ways, some of which I've discussed in my book, and you could just make up your own thing. You don't need me or anyone else to tell you what to do, but it does seem to have some beneficial effects. That's hard to prove one way or another. So I suppose the only way you could do an experiment would be to take two more or less identical plants, bless one and bless another, put them in identical conditions and see which one does the best. But even that wouldn't really necessarily prove anything. But I do believe it does make a difference. If you give your energy and intentions towards the plant, it will do better. So next thing I'm going to show you is planting from a pot. Okay, so here you can see a birch tree. This is one of the native trees of Ireland, which you'll find on the ohm list. In fact, it's the first letter is of the Irish ohm alphabet. It's for this tree. So anyway, you probably can't see, there's a bit of a little woodland here. They're pretty much like sticks at the moment. Most of these were planted a year ago, and so they haven't had much chance to get to a reasonable size. This one is a little seedling that I found, and I potted it up, and now it's ready to go into the ground, and it should start to grow a lot more this year. Trees take a while, you know, sometimes for the first 2 or 3 years they don't appear to do a lot, and then they will suddenly shoot up. So yeah, I'm going to dig a nice hole for this now. As you can see, this hole is quite a lot bigger than the pot. People sometimes make the mistake of making the hole just a little bit bigger than the pot is. So the reason I've done it much bigger is you want loose soil around the tree to help it get started. So I'm going to carefully take this out of the pot. So I turned it on its side. You might loosen up first with your hand and then turn it upside down, pull it out. This is not pot bound, but the roots are beginning to spread around the outside now. So it's a good time. You might want to loosen it up a tiny bit, very gently. And it's, as you can see, it's too low. You can use your hand or stick to see the level at which it's planted. So I need to put some more soil in there to build up the level of the plant to the right height. So you want the collar of a tree where it comes out of the ground to be level with the ground that it's sitting into. You don't want the roots sticking out of the top, and neither do you want to bury the bottom of the trunk. So I'm going to carefully put all this sod back in and the soil. Again, if you find any big stones, you might choose to take them out. Right, so I think that should do the job. Now, you might want to take a bit more time with it and break up the soil a bit smaller, possibly. I've done this very quickly for the purposes of this video. So, not going too close to the actual stem, I'm just going to gently firm it down. Gently being the operative word, as I said before. No stumping. So there's some stones put into the pot, which I'm going to take away, and I will reuse that pot. I never buy pots. I just keep reusing them over and over again. And, well, sometimes, as you'll see over here, I have a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. So I repurposed it as a plant pot. Because it's no use as a bucket anymore. So as a general ethos, you know, sort of being a good gardener or a druid gardener or a spiritual gardener is not just about gardening, it's a whole attitude towards life, including recycling, reusing things, not wasting things, making use of what you have around you. Oh look, here's my little gardener friend, come to help. Yes, you're great. You're a great helper, aren't you? So that's it. I just finished that, I blessed the plant, and I'll put a little collar onto that, you know, of cardboard to help keep away the weeds. Once it gets to a reasonable height of, like, say 2-3 feet, you don't need to really do that anymore, because it's already got to the point where it will survive, it won't get strangled. You might want to do that for purely cosmetic, ornamental reasons. If you've got a very attractive plant and you want to show it off, you might continue to put bark mulch in a ring around it. Just be careful not to pile up too much onto the bark itself, because that can cause the trunk to rot. But anyway, that's me done for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and feel free to leave a comment and give a like if you enjoyed what I have to say. And there's more videos coming, and I think a couple I've already done if you want to check those out too. Okay, thanks for watching.